Well, how y'all doing? Here we go with part two of our study in element two for the technician amateur radio course. Going through some of the questions and giving a little chatter about some of, not all of the questions, but all of them. Okay, question. When does your station have to be available for inspection by the FCC? And that's literally at any time of their choosing. They don't need a warrant, don't really need a reason. However, I will add, in 35 years of ham radio, I've never had a notice from them, never had a visit, never had anything like that. So it's really nothing to get excited about. But that is the official. They can pay a visit anytime. Okay, when using tactical identifiers such as race headquarters during a community service net operation, how often must your station transmit the station's FCC assigned call sign? That's at the end of the communication and every 10 minutes during the communication. And that is the rule also for all amateur transmissions. Every 10 minutes and at the end of the conversation. Let's see, when is an amateur station required to transmit its assigned call? We just covered that. Which of the following is an acceptable language to use for a station identification when operating in a phone subband? And that, of course, is English. What method of call sign identification is required for a station transmitting phone signal? Send the call sign either using a CW or a phone emission. Either is acceptable. Some rigs years ago actually had a CW identifier in them that would ID the station every 10 minutes, regardless, so that, in case you were chatting with somebody and you forgot, it would ID the station in CW every 10 minutes. I don't see too many of them anymore, though. That was years ago. Okay, which of the following formats of a self-assigned indicator is acceptable when identifying using a phone transmission? KL7CC stroke 3 slant stroke W3 slant W3 or slash W3. Either of the three is acceptable. Which of the following restrictions applies when a non-licensed person is allowed to speak to a foreign station using a station under the control of a technician class control operator? Answer here, the foreign station must be one with the U.S. has a third-party agreement. So, and we have agreements with most countries. What is meant by the term third-party communication? And we discussed this in another video, but I'll go over this again. A message from a control operator to another amateur station control operator on behalf of another person. Say you want to send a message from your sister over to your brother or something like that. That is third-party traffic. Okay, what type of amateur station simultaneously retransmits the signal of another amateur station on a different channel or channels? We've talked about that. That is a repeater. Who is accountable should a repeater inadvertently retransmit communications that violates the FCC rules? The control operator of the originating station. So if you're the one that gets dirty on the air, etc., the repeater owner is not held liable, but rather you are. Which of the following is a requirement for the issuance of a club station license grant? The club must have at least 4 members. Alright, we'll go down here and have a look at the next section. Which of the following is a common repeater frequency offset in the 2-meter band? That is plus or minus 600 kilohertz. We discussed that the other day. The national calling frequency for FM simplex operation in 2 meters, 146.52. That's sort of the channel 19, as it were, of 2 meters. Common repeater offset for the 70 centimeter or the 440 megahertz band, plus or minus 5 megahertz. What is the appropriate way to call another station on a repeater if you know the other station's call sign? Say the other station's call, then identify with your own. How should you respond to a station calling CQ? Same basic way. Transmit the other station's call, followed by your own call. And that's often done phonetically. You most often find that on the HF band, and we'll give phonetics to ensure that they copy your call sign correctly. Which of the following is required when making on-the-air test transmissions to identify the transmitting station? And that's normally you testing your equipment. You like to put out your call so everybody knows who's testing their equipment. Okay, what is meant by repeater offset? And that's the difference between the repeater's transmit frequency and its receive frequency. What's the meaning of the procedural signal CQ? And that is calling any station. What brief statement indicates that you're listening on a repeater and looking for a contact? Simply identifying your station. Give them your call sign. You normally key up the repeater, give your call one time, unkey, and then listen. What is a band plan beyond the privileges established by the FCC? A voluntary guideline for using different modes or activities within an amateur band. And these are available online. I might do a video sometime downloading one of them and discussing the band plan sometime. What's the term described as an amateur station transmitting and receiving, that they're transmitting and receiving on the same frequency? That is simplex. Which of the following is a guideline when choosing an operating frequency for calling CQ? A. Listen first to B. Make sure that no one else is using the frequency. B. Ask if the frequency is in use. C. Make sure you're in your assigned portion of the band. Or D. All of the above, and all of the above is correct in that situation. What is the most common use of the reverse split function of a VHF-UHF transceiver? And that's to listen on a repeater's input frequency. A lot of times you want to see if you can hear the buddy you're talking to or the family member you're talking to on the repeater's input frequency to see if you're maybe in range to talk to each other simplex. You'll go to the repeater input frequency to listen to see if you can hear them. What term describes the use of a subaudible tone transmitted along a normal voice audio to open the squelch of a receiver? I did talk about tone squelch the other day, sort of selective hearing, but I don't think I officially gave the term. That is known as CTCSS. If a station is not strong enough to keep the repeater's receiver squelch open, which of the following might allow you to receive the station's signal? And that again is to listen on the repeater's input frequency. Which of the following could be the reason you're unable to access a repeater whose output you can hear? A. Improper transceiver offset. B. The receiver may require a proper CT/CSS tone from your transceiver. C. The repeater may require a proper DCS tone from your transceiver, or all of the above, and the correct answer there is all of the above. What might be the problem if a repeater user says your transmissions are breaking up on voice peaks? You're talking too loud. I've never known that to occur, though. What type of tones are used to control repeaters linked by the Internet Relay Linking Project protocol? And that's the DTMF. The numbers on the keypad is your DTMF tones. Those were used years ago, by the way, for repeater control and for phone patch capability. Here's one I'm not familiar with, something I've never done, but I'll give you the question anyway. How can you join a digital repeaters talk group? Program your radio with the group's ID or code. I've never played with the digital modes on V or UHF, so I really don't know a whole lot about this. Which of the following applies when two stations transmitting on the same frequency interfere with each other? Common courtesy should prevail, but no one has the absolute right to any frequency. None of this, well, I've been on this frequency for 18 years, our club monitors this frequency, or any of that crap. What is a talk group on a DMR digital repeater? Again, something I've never played with, but we'll give you the question here anyway. A way for a group of users to share a channel at different times without being heard by other users on the channel. Again, something I'm not familiar with. What Q signal indicates that you're receiving interference from other stations? That's QRM. What Q signal indicates that you're changing frequency? That's QSY. Why are Simplex channels designated in the VHF and UHF band plans? So that stations within mutual communications range can communicate without tying up a repeater. Where may SSB phone be used in amateur bands above 50 megahertz? And the correct answer here, in at least some portion of all these amateur bands. Which of the following describes a linked repeater network? A network of repeaters where signals are received by one repeater are repeated by all other repeaters. We had something like this years ago, only it wasn't localized. There was a big monster thunderstorm supercell group that formed, I want to say down in Texas or Oklahoma or something like that, and started moving northeast, clear up here into Illinois, going off into Indiana. It was a monster complex, and a bunch of repeaters from all the way from Texas, Oklahoma, all the way up through Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, all through here, got together and linked up so that hams could track the storm, as well as the weather service, and follow what was going on. When do FCC rules not apply to the operation of an amateur station? Oh, excuse me, never. FCC rules always apply. What is meant by the term NCS used in net operations? That's the net control station. Net control station, of course, is the one who runs the net and keeps a smooth flow. So you've got one station who's sort of moderating everything. Everybody else sits back and listens while the net control runs it up and down the line. What should be done when using voice modes to ensure that voice messages containing unusual words are received correctly? And that's to spell the words using a standard phonetic alphabet. We have common phonetic terms. Once in a while we'll get goofy when we're being silly, but when it comes down to business, we do have a standard phonetic alphabet. Let's see, what do races and areas have in common? We discussed this the other day. Both organizations provide communications during emergency. What does the term traffic refer to in net operation? These are formal messages exchanged by net station. Which of the following is an accepted practice to get the immediate attention of the net control station when reporting an emergency? You begin your transmission by saying priority or emergency, followed by your call sign. Which of the following is an accepted practice for an amateur operator who is checked into a net? Remain on frequency without transmitting until asked to do so by the net control station. Which of the following is a characteristic of good traffic handling? Passing messages exactly as received. Are amateur station control operators ever permitted to operate outside the frequency privileges of their license class? Yes, but only if necessary in situations involving the immediate safety of human life or protection of property. What information is contained in the preamble of a formal traffic message? The information needed to track the message. What is meant by the term check in reference to formal traffic messages? The number of words or word equivalents in the text portion of the message. So you say check to you're verifying that everything was copied correctly. Let's see, we covered Aries in previous. And of course we're hearing Cinder in the background. What is the name for the distance a radio wave travels in one complete cycle? That is the wavelength. What property of a radio wavelength or a radio wave is used to describe its polarization? The orientation of the electric field. This is usually given as either vertical or horizontal. Usually. What are the two components of a radio wave? The electric and the magnetic field. How fast does a radio wave travel through free space? Speed of light. So, an ironic one with this one, there are guys who do what's called moon bounce. They will, or EME, Earth, Moon, Earth. They will bounce their signal off the moon and back. And they can hear their own signals coming back from the moon, the Earth, or the moon being 238,000 miles up, takes it about a second and a quarter. So you can often hear your signal coming back right at the very end. How does the wavelength of a radio wave relate to its frequency? The wavelength gets shorter as the frequency increases. Hence, your antennas get smaller as the frequency goes up. What's the formula for converting frequency to approximate wavelength in meters? Wavelength in meters equals 300 divided by the frequency in megahertz. What property of radio waves is often used to identify the different frequency bands? And that's the approximate wavelength. 160, 40, 80, etc.